Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Code 3 at Depot Street. Truck boy intercept.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to Talking Grit. You can find us on Twitter at Talking Grit Pod. I'm Jason Harwood, and I'm your awesome co-host. And with me is the generally acceptable Jacob Litton.
You could barely get that sentence out.
It's now the off season for all 32 teams, so we're back to 0-0. It's a new league year. Free agency begins March 12th. But for right now, we got some stuff we could talk about. The NFL awards were last week, and there were some comments from a certain former Lions safety that I want to get your opinions on, Jacob. But I don't know if you remember, but there was a big game yesterday. I got to watch it. So before we get to talk about the game, I want to know your setup. Who are you watching the game with? Are you doing it at home? What's going on?
What game are you referring to? My season ended a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Talk about this other game, for the NFL game. So,
oh, that's right. Yeah. No,
big game for two cities, right?
Right? Two cities we don't care for the most, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, chill. Watch it at home as I generally do. Sometimes some family members have Super Bowl parties, so sometimes we go out there. I think I told you, I mentioned this before. I just can't. I want to watch the football game. I want to be into the game. There's too much other talking. There's too many questions asked of me, like outside of what this means, what that means, commercial talk. Sometimes good. You can talk about it during halftime. Generally don't like the idea of Super Bowl parties. So this was a good one. We, made a bunch of different snacks and stuff, hung out at the house, watched it with JJ and Milo.
What's your best snack that you had?
The best snack? So I actually make these. They're called gyozas. I don't know why they're called that, but that's just what I've been told. It's like a wonton wrapper with mozzarella cheese and garlic salt. So it's kind of like a variation of a cheese stick. It's always a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, that's
good. There was
good.
no crowd. It was just me and JJ, but yeah. No, it was good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Jeremy probably would not appreciate them, but
yeah, the mozzarella sticks. Yeah. He would say something else. No. Yeah, we usually have like a small group of family members over. My uncle, Bob, that comes over. So much fun to watch a football game with because he's fun to pick on. He never wins at the squares, but he buys a bunch of squares. So it's always fun to see him almost win and then not win at the last second. And he's just generally a fun guy to be around, but he fell, so he wasn't able to come. So that was kind of a bummer. My grandma did come over, loves sports. She won one of the squares, so that was really cool. My youngest, Bradley, won one of the squares. And at my house, basically whoever's at the house, we all chip in $5, and then we split the number of squares evenly. And then just for house fun, we'll buy an instant scratch-off ticket for the winner of the quarters. So you get the, 1/4 of the pot, and then you also get a free scratch-off ticket. Well, Bradley won like $15 on the one scratch-off, or $15 cash, and then scratch off the lottery ticket, won another $25 on a scratch-off. So that was good for him. So
good day for him.
We usually have the same group. We had Sarah's uncle come over, which was different for us, and then the boys had a friend over, but they really pay attention to the game, and it's a fun time. I'm like you. I like to be able to sit and watch the game and dissect it. And but this Super Bowl is kind of different because I was really indifferent to both of these teams. And, luckily for me, it wasn't competitive. So if I wanted to be fully invested in whatever and there was distractions, it didn't really matter to me. The game was over by halftime.
Yeah, sometimes I'll watch the commercials and stuff like that too, just to see which one's the best. Because of the way the game was going, commercial was just like any other commercial time for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys, you're at a party, so I'm sure everybody's excited about the commercials or whatever watching them. But here, I'd only watched a handful of them. I don't even know which ones were good.
I don't even know. The only thing that was freaky was the hat. Do you remember the hat? Like the skin hats? like they were the Tubi commercials. Did you see those?
No, I didn't.
So
see
like
that.
we couldn't even hear the sound because like there was just a lot of like talking going on and just conversation or whatever, and so we weren't really paying attention to the commercials as close as we used. But like the Tubi one, I don't even know what it was. Just a weird ad. Like the people had like heads that were hats. I don't know. The hats look like skin. It was really weird. Look it up. It's freaky. There was like 3 of them.
That's the thing about the Super Bowl commercials too, is like, back like years ago, you never saw these things ahead of time. They debuted that day. Now a bunch of them are like, you can see them leaked online, or like you just said, if I want to see that commercial, it takes me 2 seconds to look it up and watch it.
Yeah.
Yet they still cost the people millions of dollars.
$8 million for 30 seconds, they said. $8 million for 30 seconds of ads. That's, man, I can't even fathom. I can't even fathom that. So, all right, what'd you think about the game in general?
It's funny, when we talked about it before, I thought the Eagles were going to get it done. I thought the defense was probably going to be too much. And the Chiefs, outside of the playoffs, just hadn't looked very impressive to me this year. I did not expect it to go the way that it did. I thought they were going to hang in there for a little while. Maybe there's going to be some more controversy at the end. For it to be 34-0 at one point is crazy. And then you're talking like, okay, are they going to score? Is this going to be, the biggest blowout of all time? That, was decided definitely, halfway. If it wasn't already decided at halftime, midway through the third quarter, when they still weren't able to do anything and gave up more points, it was over at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So right before the half, like less than 2 minutes, or it might have been around the 2-minute mark, the Chiefs get the ball back, and it was 17-0 at that point. And then Chiefs were going to get the ball after halftime. So my thought was like, Chiefs are going to score, and then they could score, and then this could be a game. But when Mahomes threw that pick, and that was a great interception down at it was a great catch.
Yeah, Zach Bond, the linebacker.
Yeah, and that was a great catch, and they scored. I was like, oh man, now it's definitely over. And then, but the only talk was that we had at our house was, are they setting up Mahomes for one of the greatest? It wasn't 28-3 yet, so it couldn't say the greatest comeback, but it was getting close, to the point where Mahomes is going to top Brady's comeback while Brady is calling the game.
Right. Hey, something to think about.
Yeah, just didn't happen. Yeah, it was, it was, like I said, there was some conversation going on, and my grandma at one point goes, it got quiet at 1 second. She goes, oh, there are announcers in this game, like as a sarcastic comment. And I looked at her, I'm like, at least we don't have to listen to Tom Brady talk. And she goes, you got that right. So she is not a fan of Tom Brady. She thinks he's arrogant. She does not like Tom Brady.
Wow. You got the Michigan thing. We have to be impartial to Tom Brady at least.
Yeah,
I can say I like Tom Brady now. He's not the best announcer though.
No, he's got to
find. He's already right here in the Super Bowl again. Like, come on.
Well, the thing is that like he's for quarterbacking, he started at the lowest rung, right? He was backup, right? Nothing expected of him, and then when he comes now at the broadcasting booth, they bring him in as the number one. And and not only did they bring him as number one, they unseat someone who's fairly popular, Greg Olsen.
And who was very good.
Yeah, and so that didn't suit Tom Brady well, because it's like Tom Brady is not someone in life that seems like he was just given everything. Even at Michigan, he had to really work at it. 6th-round draft pick for the Patriots, had to work at it to get to where he's at, and it just seems like this job he was just given. And, that doesn't leave a good taste. You can't root for him in that case. If he'd have been like the 3rd or 4th, and that probably would have suited him better to be like the 3rd or 4th analyst for a year or two to like find his style and like get better at what he's doing. But yeah.
Yes, but I think you're expecting too much out of these announcers. It's just, it's about the name, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Tom Brady's going to have good insight, but it's more about the fact that his name is Tom Brady.
Yes.
That's the same reason why you have the analysts on, the Sports Center or ESPN shows, all the different things. It's just kind of the names are get thrown out there. And it's not, I guess the only good example I can think of is a basketball example. So I don't even know if you get that, but like Kendrick Perkins was a basketball player.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible takes all the time. Just really weird things that he says, never anything good. And he's been one of like the top analysts or whatever for I don't even know how long. I think that's ESPN. I don't know what show he's on or anything. But it's like if he wasn't a former basketball player, if he didn't have the name and everything like that, and he wasn't even that notable of a basketball player, but it's just one of those things, you know, they'd rather have somebody like that than a nobody, even if the nobody knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I've also, you know, when we started back in May and we're still trying to get like a Twitter, you know, thing going, you get the social media thing going to just get your name out there. I just have trouble. We don't have like, I mean, our takes may be wrong, but we don't have like ridiculous takes, I don't feel like, or like stick to our guns even when we're proven wrong about something. And I feel like that's what it takes to either, you know, to get out there. I look at like what Jeremy or Justin Rogers, what, you know, they responded to some of these bad takes, or Woodward Sports, you know, they have like terrible takes, right?
And that's how they got there, though.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
I mean, that's how they get the following, is by having ridiculous.
Right, but I don't want to ever be in that spot where like
no,
I get more followers or more interactions because I'm saying something stupid. I'd rather have 10 people
you'll
know
do that
I'm
on your
smart
own
rather than 1,000 of people know I'm stupid, you know? I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. So let's you know,
let's talk about the bad take, though. Do
yeah,
you want to go over that? Or
yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about bad takes. I'm gonna let you introduce it. Go ahead.
So the hot topic on Twitter right now, because we've been talking about the Super Bowl, the Eagles, obviously defensive performance. They're wanting to, you know, trade as many picks as necessary to get Myles Garrett on the team based on how the Eagles played. And that's something that I am not, you know, not on board with. But how do you feel about it?
I don't agree with that at all. I mean, if we got Myles Garrett, I think both you and I would be excited for the next season, right? We'd be like, okay,
absolutely.
We'd be really excited. We'd support Myles Garrett. I wouldn't be mad at him for any of that. But I think at the end of the day, you know, what has gotten us, the Lions, to this point right now has been drafting football players and drafting the best player available. And if we trade for Myles Garrett, number one, we're going to give up capital to get him, draft capital to get him. Number two, or the opportunity of maybe re-signing some of our players or having, you know, financial flexibility is gone because Myles Garrett's going to take up some of that space. I don't know Myles Garrett like as a teammate, right? I'm not around him. I don't follow the Browns. I know that he's a heck of a football player. I have a feeling that he would probably mesh with the team. But that is another thing is like, I don't know how, you know, I don't know if he's a big alpha and you got Aiden on the other side, right? I mean, that's, you know, you're going to have to deal with that. And Aiden is in this town's going to be number one. I don't care what Myles Garrett does. Aiden's going to be number one. And just from the Michigan standpoint and just being from the area and all that stuff. So that is another thing difficult thing to deal with. The other thing that we don't have to go into depth here, but probably Detroit goes, I think Morgan and Meko go through this, is the Browns were going to have a huge cap hit to trade Myles Garrett. They have no incentive to trade him other than Myles Garrett saying, I'm not going to play for you. And they have to get something. They're already in cap hell because of the Deshaun Watson thing. They're not going to take on another $30 million in like dead cap money to get rid of a good player. It's
their best player.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think it's all a big pipe dream. I think you'd have a better chance to get Max Crosby than you would Myles Garrett, to be honest with you. I don't think either are going to come here. The other thing that I think that
my earpiece fell out when you said you don't think either. Who else did you say?
I said Max Crosby. I don't think either one of those guys are going to end up here. But I would also
we would welcome either of them.
Yes. Oh yeah. I will support them, but I think that there's opportunity costs for getting them here.
Yes, it's not about the player. Obviously, if you're like, hey, do you want Myles Garrett? Do you want Max Crosby? Of course we want them. It's the price that it's going to cost to get them here and keep them here.
Mm-hmm.
And, that money has to come somewhere. The draft picks going away is huge.
Yes.
And that's something that I don't think people, they just see the result and they don't really realize that the Eagles' defense was built on draft picks. Yeah, I mean, they're dominant, but they've got, like, their defensive line, 3 of the 4 of them were first-round picks for the Eagles. Their defensive backs, I mean, obviously they got Slay in the trade with us, but, the rookies, those are just this year, first and second round picks. They've been working on building this defense, and it worked. So, wouldn't you rather build through the draft, especially the way we've been drafting?
Yep.
We're right there. We're right on the cusp. We don't need to get, yes, an all-star like that would be nice, but if that means we're missing out on potentially 2, 3, 4, valuable players over the next, 4 or 5 years, we can't do that.
Yeah. Not if you want to be a consistent winner. And see, that's where I think no matter how good you are or whatever you have, there's a certain amount of luck that goes into winning the Super Bowl, whether it's injury luck, facing a team that has, some sort of bad luck. I mean, there is a form of luck. You could be the best team, but you might run into, the Chiefs ran into the Eagles and they just blew them away, right? I mean, there's just sometimes you just run into something that you can't come up against, or you have an injury at the wrong time. So for me, it's like if I'm going to go to a lottery, I could buy 10 tickets to this season. That's the Myles Garrett, right? I'm going to buy 10 tickets for this one lottery pick, this one season, and then the next 9 years are going to be bad. Or I could buy 10 lottery tickets, one for each year, and then, I have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl. Because ultimately, for me, I just want that Super Bowl. And I think I'd rather have 10 seasons of getting to the Super Bowl rather than blowing it in 1 or 2 years and then having like what the Saints are going through, or the Browns, like we just said, cap hell, and then you're struggling or whatever. And what's going to keep us afloat is signing our players and then drafting cheap rookies that we will develop into good players that deserve a second contract.
That's the key to success.
The people that just want Myles Garrett right now are impatient to me. That's the way I look at it, right? I mean, do you categorize it as that? Like, we just need to win now?
Right. Oh, I think they would have to be if that's your thought process, is to trade like the 2 first rounds and the second or whatever. If you're talking about trading that many draft picks for Myles Garrett, you just want to win now. And you're one of those people, I'm going to put all my eggs in the basket and, we're going all in for this next year. Hopefully we get it done, and then we'll be back to, mid-range, struggling, cap hell, We want to keep the window open for as long as possible, and that's not how you do it.
I agree. And as long as we got Brad Holmes making those picks and that front office making those picks, I want to keep as many draft picks as we can. I mean, I don't mind trading around and moving things around and getting your guy like they did with Terrion. You're not giving up, you're giving up third rounders or, later to get your guy. I'm okay with that. But there also might be this year where we don't use the first round pick and we trade back to get more capital for next year if we want to bump up and get a guy. I could go either way on that, especially when you're drafted late in the first round. Not too much different between those late first round guys and second round picks, get an extra third round pick, getting an extra, chance at getting a starter or a player. And it's not like we have a lot of holes on this team that we need to just fill right now. We'll see after free agency if we get Zeiler back, our offensive line's fairly set. Our offense there won't be really anybody to maybe signing Tim Patrick back, which that could be done before free agency. So we'll see.
Right. There's not too many spots to fill. There's not too many openings here. It's about getting depth. And we're not going to have another season with the injuries that we had this year either.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a fluke.
That was. And the fluky thing was that it was all on the defensive side. I mean, it was a lot for the whole team in general. We could have next year where the offense gets hit a little bit more. And, we were fairly lucky other than Khalif and Demo going down. And we had some, spot stuff on the offensive line, but nothing, that would last more than a game or two. we were fairly good on the offensive side of the ball. It's just that defense just got decimated. Linebacker especially, and then our line really just took it. Our secondary was all right until Carlton got hurt. So, yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was in this game was the refs. Like, lead up to this was like the Chiefs are fully favored and by the refs, and the league's got to, they have their script and they want the Chiefs to get there. Didn't appear that way. Although the first foul, we talked a little bit at work today. You want to talk about that offensive pass interference first before we get into it?
Right. I mean, the timing of it, especially, you had a couple of the media members even asking, like Mahomes and Travis Kelce, about benefiting from referee calls and everything like that. And you could tell it kind of got under their skin, having to answer questions like that and having to deal with this, what they say is a ridiculous notion that the refs are on their side. And then the very first, big critical play of the game's 4th down, they throw it deep and they get offensive pass interference called on the Eagles. It did not help that case. Right away, you got people screaming, you can't call that. And of course, it's for the Chiefs and blah, blah, blah. I've said this before. I know I said it to you. They do not call offensive pass interference enough. If you're going to call it as much as you do on the defense, you've got to call it on the offense. They, yes, there's hand fighting going on. Way too many times they let the offensive receiver get that last shove to create separation to make the catch. That happens way too much. And this time they probably would have let it slide if not for it being right in his helmet. It was right in his face. Mm-hmm. And that's the only reason I think they called that, because they do have a little bit of the fighting. It was AJ Brown, right? He just shoved him right in the face mask and then, goes and makes the catch. Was it pass interference? Yes, that was offensive pass interference. Is it tough to call that on 4th down the first drive of the Super Bowl? Yes. But I mean, a penalty is supposed to be a penalty no matter when it happens in the game. What were your thoughts, though? Like, live, did you think it was a foul? Like, before you saw the replay,
well, before I saw the replay, I thought it'd be on the Chiefs just because you see a flag like that go out, and I thought, oh, that's on the Chiefs. Then they did the replay, saw it. AJ Brown fully extended his arm right into the face mask, and the Chiefs probably flopped a little bit, like throwing his head back as violently as he did. But I'm okay with, honestly, if they called that every game, I'd be fine with that type of penalty, because you're right. The offense will create extra separation. And you got to be pretty egregious for it to be called offensive pass interference. The line's got a fair amount of offensive pass interference calls against the opposition. We're the benefit of those, but most of them, they were almost all pick plays.
Right.
It's hardly ever called in a situation where it's a one-on-one, especially on a deep shot. It's 99 out of 100 times, if not more, called on the defense. But
that terrible one on Thanksgiving with Vildor.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Like, are you kidding me? Why?
Yeah.
You can't touch them if you're on defense, but if you're on offense, you get a full extension.
Yeah. Well, if AJ Brown would have hit him, I think you're right. If he hits him in the shoulder and does that same thing, they probably don't call that.
Right.
It was
even though by rule, that's still, full extension of the arm, it should be PI, but they don't call that on the offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that was about the only call the Chiefs had go their way pretty much the whole night. Outside of those really weird, the false start that they kept calling on the field goal.
Yeah. And those didn't matter because they kept
Jake Elliott kept making it. They did drop the next 5 yards.
One of my favorite things about the Super Bowl is that, so Jake Elliott was the kicker for the Eagles, was Preston's fantasy team, and he didn't have a great regular season. So every time they got a field goal range, you'd be like, oh, they get 3 points or whatever. And Preston would look at me and goes, Jake Elliott sucks. He's not. And it's just so funny just to listen to talk about that. And then, he kept getting backed up 5 yards. I think going back to, do the Chiefs get benefits calls? And I've seen enough Chiefs games that I do think that they probably get the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Whether that's going to matter in the game or not, I don't know. I think it comes down to, and we'll talk about this later in the offseason, Jacob, about, automatic first downs, for a defensive holding or something like that. that could really change a drive because you get that on the right time at third down or whatever. It just gives you a whole new set of downs. And you get Patrick Mahomes on a regular day. I mean, yesterday was probably one of his worst days in his career, but if you get him on a regular day, give him an extra set of downs, that's tough. It's tough enough to stop him once, to force a punt or whatever, but they have to do it 2 or 3 times on a regular drive. That's tough. But Mahomes on that fumble where he gets, he clearly was a fumble, but the defensive lineman just shoved Mahomes right in the face, and they didn't call that. And that was pretty blatant to me because I think I saw that live. I was like, he hit him pretty high. His hands were up high, and I was like, they could have called that, but they
something like that was the main difference. Is usually that's most of the gripe that I feel like people have is that Mahomes, the late slides or the questionable roughing the passer when it's he barely got hit.
Mm-hmm.
This game, it really seemed like they were letting them attack Mahomes. I don't believe they got one call on him, right? I didn't see any.
I don't think so.
And I mean, they definitely were hitting him.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were able to get to him with 4, which was crazy. And then, I didn't really see anything else that I called questionable. Now, I'm, Chiefs fans may beg to differ with me. I don't know what's out there. But that was the most blatant one, with him getting hit in the face. I think the previous calls, they had that one, the Texans, where really the Texans got called for roughing the passer, and they hit, the defenders hit each other and just went over the top of Mahomes, but yet they called that. And, that's the type of crap that I think the Chiefs get, is they get
right
just enough of the benefit of the doubt to throw that flag out there. And I think the refs, I don't think the NFL said, hey, you need to flag this, but it's pretty clear that Mahomes is pretty important for the importance of this game, like the NFL game. And so the refs are going to be quick to protect him. Where Bo Nix or someone else, Jared Goff, they're not going to get that benefit of the doubt that Mahomes is getting.
We saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Let Mahomes get cracked in the head on a pick 6 and see what happens.
Yeah, no, it probably would have got kicked out of the game. I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't.
They'd have made the other team just forfeit. You can't do that.
They made it clear that I saw a funny meme that when the Commanders kept jumping off sides on Jalen Hurts and the ref said we can award you a touchdown. I saw the meme where the guy just is moving his hands together, oh, I'm going to get this. It's Chiefs fans or Chiefs players figuring out that the rest could just award them a touchdown for nothing.
Right.
It was really hilarious. So, yeah, there's always going to be this. I mean, we've had our fair share of rough gripes as Lions fans of not getting the benefit of the doubt. I think it's really hard to be perfect for these refs, but I also think that, and I don't think there's a script, but I do think, the NFL makes it clear what's important and what's, they're not going to enforce, and they can definitely change the game really quickly. Holding call here, an important play. Yeah. All right. Do you want to move on to some of the Lions season review stuff? The season's over now. So
enough of these other teams. Let's get back to the Lions.
Yeah. So we haven't talked, we kind of held off to the season was over before we go through some of our Lions overview stuff. So first, we're going to start with offensive MVP. I have it down to 3 players. I'm going to let you go. Who did you pick for the Lions offensive MVP this year?
Offensive MVP, I gave that to Jahmyr Gibbs. I only had 2 on my list. It was Gibbs and Penei Sewell.
Okay.
But Gibbs, top 5 in rushing yards this year, despite splitting carries. Everyone else on that list is like a bell cow running back. He had almost 100 less carries than Saquon. But top 5 in rushing yards, top 3 in scrimmage yards. He led the league in total touchdowns. I mean, just a phenomenal season from Gibbs.
Yep. Yeah, we really seen him take over. I mean, Demo started out the gate really hot, and then Gibbs was keeping track with him with the yards, just with less touches. And then when Demo got hurt, you could see what Gibbs's full potential could be.
Right.
And in his second season, getting almost 2,000 all-purpose yards, like you said, leading the league And rushing, yeah, he's my offensive MVP too. My third, you mentioned Penei Sewell. It's awesome that offensive lineman's on there. We can't really talk too much statistics with him, although he got sacked more than he allowed a sack this year. So that's pretty amazing statistic. My other one is Jared Goff. I know that he had a couple spotty games. He didn't end the season on the game that we want from him, but he was better this year than he was last year, which I know we had talked about, like, could he get better signing that big contract? Yeah. And then it's going to be interesting. Ben Johnson's gone next year. What's that going to mean for Goff? Is he going to be as comfortable with Morton? They've already worked together, so I feel good there. We still have Dan Campbell. And based on Dan Campbell's comments, like, he called the offense his baby. So I'm just so curious how much his influence on Ben Johnson, like that chemistry together, and how much of that was Ben Johnson, how much of that is Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell isn't going to be someone that takes credit. Not that Ben Johnson was stealing credit, but Dan Campbell's not going to be like, well, I'm the one that, came up with this plan or whatever. So I'm not as worried about losing Ben Johnson because we have Dan Campbell. And, on the defensive side, keeping Calvin Shepard, I feel good about that. So,
well, we already said, like, about the continuity, if Zeitler comes back, but we are rolling out the same exact offense. We have the same squad, the same guys, and as long as we're not changing too much of the play calls and everything with, it's still Goff back there. I'm sure the offensive coordinator that they brought in has been brought in with the intention on, we're not going to be switching up too much. We're not going to be making things harder, And like you said, if Dan Campbell, if it's his baby, it's going to be interesting to see how similar the Bears offense looks to what we were this past year.
Yeah. That's going to be a really interesting dynamic, how all that shakes out. But, losing Ben Johnson, I would rather have him back than to lose him.
Right.
But having Dan Campbell, John Morton worked with Goff a couple years ago. He's been working with Sean Payton. That philosophy is going to be the same. So I don't think he's going to come in here and try to change things for the sake of changing things. Whether we're going to have as many trick plays or whatever, I don't think that was all Ben Johnson, all the trick plays. I think that they all work together on that. Although I don't think we necessarily need all that. We're so good on the line with all our skill positions that we don't need trick plays. We could just, go out there and just play our best and beat other teams. Although I do want to see the hook and ladder play because I think that play is so hard to defend. So I'm hoping that just stays part of our offense.
Yeah. No, they're awesome when they work, but it's just one of those things, just like going 4 on 4th down. Like, when it works, it's like, that was a great play call. That was awesome. Mm-hmm. We love to see it. And then when it doesn't work, it's like, what are you doing? Why'd you let Jahmyr throw the ball, throw an interception? Like, it just inevitable. That's what it's going to look like.
Yep. Yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20 with those, right?
Right.
Why would you do it in this spot? If it works, they get a touchdown. You're like, oh, what a genius call. I would have never thought of that. All right. Let's move on to defensive MVP. I think that this one's fairly obvious. I'll start out. It's Kerby Joseph, right?
Right.
Aiden plays a whole season. It's going to be a good argument between the two. Although I think Aiden probably, if he kept playing the way he was playing, it'd be hands down Aiden. But Kerby turned into, he's always been a ball hawk, but he turned into a way more effective ball hawk. And I'm super excited to see his growth into the next year.
Absolutely. Just can't say enough positive things about Kerby. He went from being really good, we were hoping he was going to take the next step, and now he went to being great. And, one of the top safeties in the league. The other guy that I have on here, just to mention, because I thought you were going to say Kerby, is Brian Branch. Mm-hmm. These are two. Brian Branch was a 2nd-round draft pick. Kerby Joseph was a 3rd-round draft pick. And they're both back there. They made, CJ, GJ expendable. We weren't worried about getting him back because of the play of them last year. And they took it to a whole other level this year, both of them.
I know. Well, Branch's interception level fell off about the time that we stopped being able to get a lot of pressure with just 4.
Yeah.
Like around that time. Because it'd be interesting to see, because I think Brian Branch is just a good football player with good football instincts that if he could play a true safety back there, and I always flashback to the Sam Darnold interception where that first game where he just undercut the route and just made a great diving interception. I feel like if we could have Aiden back and get some pressure, you're going to see more of that. And Branch would have had more interceptions. Branch.
They also had to blitz him more after that
Yes.
too, so he wasn't dropping back as much. He was the one kind of trying to get pressure. So you're right.
Well, when Carlton went down, then they start pulling Branch. You know, the Iffy came back, so Iffy's playing back there. Branch is playing closer to the line, and yes, he's getting more pressure. I love having Brian Branch on my team, no matter where they have, because he's gonna make football plays. And I think trying to find Kelvin Shepard is gonna put him in the right spot, and I'm just curious what that right spot is going to be next year. Are they going to put him back at the safety? Are we going to find someone at safety to replace him? You know, or are we going to, if Amik has to go to the outside because we don't have Carlton, Brian Branch could be back in line to play nickel, depending on what we think of Rakestraw. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to look for in the offseason, and I really look forward to figuring out where all that's going to line up.
Seems like it was only like a month ago we were talking about this before we went to training camp. It's the same thing we were trying to look at, see how all the defensive backs look together, see where everybody lined up.
Yeah. Well, we'll be, I know.
Already can't wait for another one.
It's like 200 days away for the season to start, but, these are the type of thoughts that go through our mind, right? We're already looking, right? We're already like, ooh, where are these chess pieces going to go? And that's why I like talking football with you, Jacob, because, you and I think alike, and we're like, oh, we're already thinking about next year and where we're going to put these in. We haven't even free agency yet. We haven't even found out all our chess pieces yet.
Right.
So we don't know. All right. Do you have a favorite game this whole season? Were you able to pinpoint one game that was your favorite?
I was able to pinpoint one game. And,
okay.
It's funny because in the grand scheme, it didn't really even matter as much. It was an AFC opponent, but my favorite game was week 11, which was the home game against the Jaguars.
Okay.
And, that was the game where it was just everything went right. Everything that we tried to do, we executed. The defense stopped them. The offense was killing it. We outgained them 645 to 170. We were perfect 3 for 3 on fourth down, 6 for 10 on third down. Goff went 24 for 29, 412 yards, 4 touchdowns. Gibbs and Demo both had a touchdown and almost 100 scrimmage yards apiece. Amon-Ra, 11 catches, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brian Branch and Jack Campbell were lighting people up. That was when Branch got that huge hit on Ingram. And, it was the debut of Zadarius Smith. We had that whole thing with Zadarius, and then he got a sack in this game. It was just like everybody ate, and it was just the most solid all-around game that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was my favorite one, even though in the end this one didn't really matter as much. But a 52-6 win at home was huge.
Yeah.
What about you?
Man.
Did you have one, or how many?
So I do have one that I think when I thought back about it, because I love all our wins, right? I just love them for all different reasons. So I'm thinking back of like the last game of the year, just, getting Alex back and just demolishing, Sam Darnold. That was great. Your Jaguars game was great, blowout. The Titans win was great because we scored so many points, but, special teams was awesome in that game. There was a lot of just exciting plays in that game. Beating Green Bay and go for it on fourth down when we're tied to kick the game-winning field goal. Awesome game. But
these things. Pick your favorite game, and then he's going to tell us every single game that we played this year.
No, I'm going to look through it. That these are all these lead up, but the one game that I liked the most was the Seattle Seahawks game. I liked his Monday night game. There was big plays in that game, just so many fun plays. That was the Goff reception game. Kerby had that awesome interception. Demo had that great run. There was, we had bad luck against Seattle the last few years. So winning on Monday night, going into that bye week, just felt so good, and I think the Seattle game was one of my favorite games. And it was, it was one of those games where like, it wasn't a blowout. Like the Jaguars game was fun and the Titans game were fun, but they're over by halftime. The Seattle Seahawks, we were in control for most of that game, but it was still kind of up in the air where, it was still competitive and it kept you interested all the way to the end. So I think Seattle, that was probably my favorite game of the year.
That was the debut of the black jerseys too, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Motor City, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was a good one.
Yeah.
I had that one,
inducted.
and I knew that you were going to have 17 games on here, so I had the one. The other one was the second one, or first one you mentioned, which was the home game against the Vikings.
Yep.
And just because, the stakes were higher, we had been hearing for weeks that the Vikings were the favorites and that our defense was not going to show up, that we weren't going to be able to stop them. It was essentially round one of the playoffs because, the winner got to host the playoff game. The loser had to go on the road. The first 14-win team to go on the road. We didn't want that. So, I mean, the stat sheet wasn't as impressive as most of the other games, but, that was a solid, dominant game. We won the time of possession. We outgained them. But yeah, that was huge. And, obviously you won the North.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was a fun game. Yeah, I could see that being number one for a lot of people's game of the year. I think it was just, we followed it up 2 weeks later with a stinker. So it kind of like made that game not as important because, yeah, we got the bye, but we didn't really take advantage of it.
I don't think that, I get what you're saying. I don't think that us losing made that game as much of a stinker. I think the Vikings looking like crap against the Rams made that like, okay, maybe they weren't, maybe, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
Just maybe they weren't as good as everyone was saying. And maybe that's why, now we're always going to have that narrative. It's like, well, you know what? They got crushed anyway against the Rams. They didn't look good there either. So I guess it takes some of the excitement or whatever, some of that accomplishment away.
I could push back a little bit on that just because he looked bad in the next game. I think some of it was the pressure of the situation too. But Sam Darnold had a very good season. So it's not like he was crap. I mean, we just put him in his place, and for all intents and purposes, the Rams might have saw that was the playbook to knock Sam Darnold down, and the Rams had beat the Vikings earlier in the year too. So it's not like, hey, that was the advantage. We had we had already seen Sam Darnold once, Aaron Glenn and the Rams had already seen him, so that's consistency there. So I could push back a little bit on that. It just, for me, the Vikings game, we won. It was a great game, but then 2 weeks later, we didn't take advantage of getting that bye and getting that home playoff game. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why we don't even have to say, our most disappointing game of the year, because obviously it's that stupid Commanders game. Yeah. Well, it's an easy answer. So, surprise player of the year. Was there a player that kind of exceeded expectations for you this year, Jacob?
Yeah, I had a couple. I actually have the first one is kind of like an honorable mention just because we already talked about him, and it was Kerby Joseph. But, that's more so just because we knew Kerby was going to be good, but I didn't expect him to bring out the level that he did. He said before the season started, he wanted to lead the league in interceptions. He was able to do that. If you would have told me before that he's going to go first team All-Pro, he's going to lead the defensive snaps, like he's going to be the top ranked safety, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. I definitely thought he was one of the best safeties in our division, but not in the league. And that's why it's, he was a surprise to me. Not because I didn't think that he had that in him necessarily. I just didn't think we were going to see that kind of return on it right away. But, he was consistently great week in and week out. And, we already talked about it. He just had an amazing year. But I do think that, is worth like an honorable mention as a surprise, is just because I didn't think he was going to be quite up to that level that quick.
Yeah, and also we haven't even mentioned like his ability to get his nose into the running game. That has exceeded expectations throughout the whole year, and something that they probably told him, hey, we're going to need you to do this, and he's been shown to do that because Brian Branch will get his nose up in there and stop the running game. Kerby wasn't that type of player, but there are plenty of times that he was up close to the line of scrimmage, reading a running play, and either making the tackle or forcing the play back inside or doing his job, doing what he should be doing.
Yes.
So for mine, I mean, you mentioned Kerby being a surprise. Yeah, when he said he wanted to lead the league in interception, I didn't think that was going to be possible. I just didn't think it. I was like, I'm glad he has that goal, but I didn't think it was going to be possible. So he exceeded my expectation. But for mine, it's still in the secondary, but Carlton Davis exceeded my expectation for the year. He was darn near the top on the corners before he got injured. His ability to have sticky coverage and just, I remember the game against Arizona. He forced Kyler Murray out of bounds and on a 4th down play, and then caused them to get a turnover on downs. That play sticks in my mind because that's a Carlton Davis play. He was involved in a lot, he was great in coverage, and I think he was great to have Terry on there because that's the type of player we want Terry on to be, right? In their tight coverage, but he's got to learn those tricks, and to have that tape and be able to work with Carlton for the year, I was super happy with Carlton. I know he only had 2 interceptions on the year, but those were very important interceptions because without those, we don't win that game in the Texans.
Right, same game, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Is there any other players? You said you had some other players.
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah, because my top one was Amik Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the secondary, but we didn't really know what to expect out of Amik before the season started. I liked his attitude in the interviews. I liked, what he was putting out there on social media. This is before you even had Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But he had the right mindset, right attitude. It was like, okay, I can get behind this guy. But, he seemed like he was ready to fight for a spot, fight for playing time. I also wasn't sure beforehand with the draft picks and everything, like, is this guy going to make the team? Like, what do we have? How is this going to look? Is he going to be able to get playing time? And he looked really good in training camp, and he played well pretty much all year long. Rakestraw got injured, and he stepped in, he just played well right away. And that culminated with the last game in the Vikings. Carlton Davis is out, and then he has to cover Justin Jefferson and holds him to 3 catches.
Yep.
It just got better and better as the season went on. He really stepped up there. And then, obviously like the devastating injury that happened, like the second play or whatever against the Commanders. But, I think it was a surprise that Amik played as well as he did.
I was pleasantly surprised with Amik, and I'm glad that he's on our team next year and that we could see him. Like we said earlier, we don't know where he's going to play. He could play inside or outside, so we'll see how that lines up. I didn't really have. That was my other player that I would mention.
Oh, okay.
But I will say it. On the offensive side, I was like, who could I pick here? And the only one I come up with, and this is not on the level of the players we just mentioned, but Mahogany. He exceeded my expectations because, late round pick. Okay, we're hoping he just makes the team, right? Or, is he going to get put on the practice squad? He's injured. He's NFI for the first 6 weeks of the season, and then all of a sudden later in the season, the Bears, he's getting a spot start because of an injury, and he looks good, And then Seidler's out, and he looked good in the playoff game. Totally exceeded my expectations, and I look forward to where he's gonna. It gives us some pieces to move around next year. So I look for him. He's either going to be our top backup or he's going to be starting next year. And
definitely
that'll be great.
I agree with that. Yeah. I only have one other person here for my surprise player, and that's Jack Campbell.
Okay.
We were hoping for the second year leap. Word out of training camp said he was putting it all together, and we saw that on the field for sure. Anzalone went out. He had to step up. Derek Barnes get hurt. Rodrigo. There's so many injuries to the linebackers and the defense, as a whole. So for him to be, he's playing top 10 like that, was a great surprise. His number of tackles, he's right up there with Fred Warner and Bobby Wagner. I mean, he definitely showed he belongs. He showed he can handle it.
The thing that I don't like about the injuries, but you always want to look at the bright side of things, right? It put Jack in a spot where he had to be in Alex's spot. So he learned that. Right. And now he could go back and play behind Alex and let Alex run that defense. And he could look at it through a different lens. Like Jack Campbell's like, I've been in that spot, and it's going to be in a better position of learning for him. At least that's the way I feel. And whether he overtakes him with Calvin Shepard, I mean, we don't know. Aaron Glenn and Alex were really close Kelvin might be running something a little different. We don't know. And Jack Campbell may be calling, maybe he's the green dot next year. I don't know. But nonetheless, Campbell played really well, but I thought the opportunity to learn and take Alex's spot for a little bit is really going to benefit this defense and him in general. And it gave us a spot to see what this future could look like. Cause we're hoping Jack Campbell supersedes Alex at some point. And yeah, we first round pick, right?
Right. No, yeah, we're getting back on that return already.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good point. I mean, being forced to take that green dot, forced to run the defense, to look at the offense differently. You got to worry about more than just your own responsibility. And then even if he doesn't get the green dot, if it's still Alex's next year, now it's almost like having 2 green dots, right? Now you know exactly what you're looking at. You can help direct. I mean, that's best case scenario.
Yeah. Well, when you saw Jack was taken out there's all those injuries, he's got players that they're pulling off the street and he's got to get them in the right spot.
Right.
That's tough for anybody. That would have been tough for Alex too. Right. I mean, you got guys that weren't on the team at the beginning of the week that all of a sudden are in there playing meaningful snaps and you got to get them in the right spot. So that was tough. So,
right.
Kudos to Jack. So, plenty more of this offseason to talk about. That's kind of it that I wanted to talk about on those topics. But the awards show was last year. Let's quickly run through this. The Goff MVP vote. He did get some MVP votes, Wasn't expecting him to win by any accounts because there were some quarterbacks that had a lot of good votes. But any thoughts on, how many votes he got, and were you surprised by anything with that in regards to that?
I was worried that he wasn't going to be as high as he was, or that, people were going to kind of overlook him after that Houston game and everything like that. So it was cool to see him, get those votes. I'm interested though, if we gave you the vote, if you get to pick 5, how would your 5 look for the MVP?
Man. And
would you put Goff in your top 5?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit later about my ideas to change the category, but I'm just going to kind of go with what I would probably have Lamar number 1. I probably put Josh Allen 2, Burrow 3, Saquon 4. And I didn't have a list prepared, so I'm going off the top of my head. I don't know if I'd have Goff number 5. I don't know who would be number 5 right now. I'd almost put Gibbs ahead of Goff, to be honest with you. 20 touchdowns. I don't know.
Right.
But when we get down to the category, maybe when we get down to ideas that change, I have things that I want to change in the MVP vote. So maybe that's why I go. Did you come up with the top 5?
Yeah, I thought about that too, but I think I probably would have picked Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, then probably Saquon. I think I would put Goff in my top 5, but he would probably it'd be Josh Allen, Lamar, Saquon, Burrow, Goff.
Okay. Yeah.
Just sticking with the theme of the quarterbacks for MVP, basically. I mean,
I know. Yeah. Let's just do that right now. Let's just talk about how I would change the category because it has to do with the quarterbacks. I don't like that the MVP has turned into just the best quarterback. I don't like that. It's like the rookie of the year is also turned into the best rookie quarterback. It's not the best.
Right.
It's hard. You got to have like an outstanding, like a player in another position has to have a really outstanding season to overtake that. So if I were going to change it, I would do like a QB of the year and then an offensive player of the year that couldn't be a quarterback. And then I would just eliminate MVP. I wouldn't have an overall MVP. I just have those 2 categories.
They should do it like Madden. So when you play Madden, you do that. They have like quarterback of the year, running back of the year, wide receiver of the year.
Okay.
Kind of like, how college has them named after players, the top running back, the top wide receiver. Yeah. And then, it doesn't have to be like one for AFC, one for NFC, but it'd be just a separate, like, okay, here's your vote, running back of the year, and you get to pick 5 and they're all running backs. Like you said, then you don't even have a true MVP award. Because I don't know, the only way you'd be able to change that is if you added the extra like quarterback, running back thing, but also if you kind of change the criteria. I just think it's always going to be perceived that the quarterback is the most valuable position. Therefore, quarterback needs to be MVP.
Yeah. Do you think if Saquon would have beat the all-time rushing record, would he have, been offensive MVP?
I still don't think so. I think
I don't
Lamar
think
and
so
Josh
either.
Allen just played too well.
Yeah.
When Adrian Peterson did that, I don't think that there were, as many impressive. That was also back before it was such a quarterback, award. But when Adrian Peterson won, I don't think the quarterbacks that were up that year had as, many impressive stats. I mean, Lamar's stat line to not win MVP with those stats is crazy.
I know.
And it's really only because he's won so much recently. I think that people are like, well, we're going to give it to Josh Allen now.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
But if you take Josh Allen off of the Bills team, they tank hard.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ravens made it not as much because they have Derrick Henry back there. Although running back Cook for the Bills is really good too. So you mentioned Adrian Peterson. Do you know what year that was that he won MVP?
Oh, man. I don't like 2007, 2008.
It's 2012.
Oh,
wow. That was the last year that a quarterback has not won the MVP award, was 2012. So it's been, 12 seasons of just who's the best quarterback this year.
Do you have the voting results in front of you?
For like the MVP, like what I'm just talking about? Yeah, I do. I have the whole list. Why? What's your?
I just want to know who the quarterbacks were.
Oh, I didn't.
Megatron was in before that year.
I'm sorry. I just have the list of the winners, so I don't have the who else was that year. The previous.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the previous non-quarterback besides before Adrian Peterson was Tomlinson in 06. And
that was when he broke the record for touchdowns, right?
Yeah, but then Sean Alexander was right before that. You start getting into like the Barry Sanders and like, when running backs were more important back then than they are right now.
So that 2012 year, just because I was trying to see, because I remember it was like, no quarterback had like, such an outstanding. So Adrian Peterson won. He had 2,097 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. So obviously a lot of yards, 348 attempts. So that's on par with what Saquon was. I don't have Saquon's numbers in front of me, but that's on par. Number 2 was Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had 4,659 yards, 37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Jared Goff this year, 4,629 yards, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions.
Yeah.
So that's almost identical year that Goff had.
And they probably had the same amount of rushing
place.
yards, right? Peyton Manning and
Peyton Manning had 6 rushing yards. Jared Goff actually outrushed him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hilarious. Good pull on the stats there. I like that. I mean, the game is a little different now. I mean, it's definitely gotten more passer oriented, and we got 17 games as opposed to 16 that were in that season. So, but still, yeah. All right, let's get into this is the one that's controversial, at least to us Lions fans. Coach of the Year. Dan Campbell did not win. It went to Kevin O'Connell, who is a good coach. But we talked about it, man. I'm sure you disagree with this as much as I do.
I called it, though. I told you. I said, if you win a division and you do that well when you're expected to do well, they do not vote you as Coach of the Year. Yeah. This goes for somebody whose team was not expected or maybe doesn't belong or, just somebody, whatever team exceeds expectations by that well wins Coach of the Year. And that's why I thought O'Connell had it in the bag before we even played the last game.
I know.
Does he deserve it more than Dan Campbell? Absolutely not.
Campbell beat him twice. But Andy Reid's never won Coach of the Year. Dan Campbell's going to have a tough time winning now because the expectations are that they're going to be good. This year, we were expected to be good, but with all the injuries, you get Aiden out. That should have pushed Dan Campbell over the top.
Right.
Here, I looked through the voting. 2 voters did not put Dan Campbell even in their top 5. Vic Carucci and Adam Sheen, or Shine, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, did not put him in their top 5. Ridiculous. I did find this. Teddy Bruschi, who somehow has a vote, put him 4th. For a guy that said, I wouldn't want Dan Campbell on my sideline, put him as 4th for the Coach of the Year. Talking out both sides of your mouth,
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, Vic Carucci, I think, is a Bills guy. I don't know about the other guy. I believe
He's
Vic
like a
Carucci's like a
national.
Bills.
He's like a
Oh,
national
okay.
guy. And
I don't know how you don't have Dan Campbell in the top 5. I'm pretty sure both of them had O'Connell first, too.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. Just as much as the MVP just become like a quarterback award, the Coach of the Year is just the most improbable. And that's why you also look at these awards 5 or 10 years after, and you're like, oh, wow, that coach, he only coached for that team 2 years before he got fired, but he was Coach of the Year. Like, or, you know, they've like didn't even win a playoff game, but he's Coach of the Year.
I know.
And I think this is one of those situations where, you know, a couple of years from now, we might be like, wow, Kevin O'Connell was Coach of the Year over Dan Campbell. That's funny. It sucks. I mean, it does. It sucks. It's, you know.
I agree. I don't need to beat a dead horse, but yeah, it should have been Dan Campbell. So, offensive player of the year went to Saquon. The interesting thing that we don't need to go into too much of this, but Tom Brady and Teddy Bruschi both voted for Penei Sewell in their top 5, which that's awesome.
That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Respect from the former players.
Exactly. You know, I think Gibbs also got votes, and Goff, I think, got some votes too. And Amon-Ra got votes. So, I mean, we had a lot of offensive players get votes, which was really cool.
You got a lot of good offensive players.
Yeah, we did. I mean, really historic offense. I mean, not like the best all time, but right up there.
Up there.
Yeah. Defensive player of the year went to Patrick Surtain, but Kerby Joseph did receive one first place vote. Dave Burkett, who is the Lions writer that has a vote, voted Kerby 5th, actually, which I was kind of surprised about that.
Who did he put? Don't tell me he put Xavier McKinney in front of him.
I don't think so. Here, I will look.
You know, it was cool to see that Kerby, obviously it was cool that he made the All-Pro. We knew he probably was not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but it was nice that he was actually getting votes and getting recognition there instead of getting snubbed, you know, about the whole, like the Pro Bowl thing.
Yes.
But I did see, like, on quite a few of them, like the people that voted for Kerby also voted for McKinney, and most of them had McKinney in front of him. And I just don't, like, you know, what metric, what could you possibly, you know, what are you looking at that he's above Kerby?
Exactly. He had more interceptions. His, you know, the quarterback rating against was like twice as good as McKinney. So I don't know. So Burkett, you asked about Burkett. So TJ Watt was his number 1, Myles Garrett 2, Surtain was 3, Hendrickson 4, and then Kerby Joseph was 5th. So
I would say it's a valid list, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
This was one of those years where it was just wide open. There was not anybody that took over or had such an amazing year, you know, that they were just cut and dry.
Yeah. Well, thus,
so I did like that they didn't just give it right. I like that they did not just say, well, you know what, TJ Watt had a pretty good year. Let's all just vote him again, even though it was not spectacular and was not even the top, you know, edge rusher stats. I'd have been cool with Hendrickson winning too.
Yep. So, yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about with the award show. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Maybe Bill Belichick's girlfriend or something like that?
I'm okay.
All right.
I did see that she wore a Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl shirt, so that was funny.
I think Snoop Dogg said his joke. He was going through so many things. He's like, he's talking about old football things. He goes, I remember so much that it's before Belichick's girlfriend was even born. It was
nice.
Oh my God. Hilarious. All right. Before we wrap up here, let's talk about these CJGJ comments. I'm going to read them right here from the Dave Burkett article before we comment on it. I'm going to say, when asked about playing in Detroit, this is Gardner-Johnson. He said, it was hell. I got lied to. So it was whatever I got told respectfully I was going to get brought back. It did get brought back. And offseason went real for me. Signing back here because I wasn't really tripping. It all worked out. And then he went on to say, truthfully, like in Detroit, it was hell. I went there just to go, okay, I got hurt. And I was like, F it. Truthfully, that's why I didn't rehab in Detroit. This guy just likes to talk. But what was your thoughts
we knew that. You know, when he's on your side, you're a little more tolerant, you know, more tolerable of it. But, you know, I don't blame it. You know, really, when Jamal Williams left, he kind of had the same sort of, not as loud, and Jamal Williams doesn't say stuff like that, but it was along the same lines of like, you know, they didn't really, you know, what you got out of it is that they probably had some sort of contract offer. There were probably some terms, and he didn't like the terms. So then Jamal Williams went elsewhere, and it's probably the same year, especially with, because Gardner-Johnson only played 3 games for us. He was hurt.
Yep.
He came back. He did, he played okay, but he didn't play great. So it was like, we have a very small sample size, and now here you are, you're wanting a, multi-year contract, you're wanting more money, and now we've got this rookie, Brian Branch, who played, lights out. So we really didn't, would it have been nice to have him? Yeah, for the right price, but at the same time, that would have been playing time taken away from Brian Branch or Kerby Joseph, maybe, which turned out better for us. Turned out better for us, it turned out better for him.
Mhm.
Obviously, he feels some type of way. He was talking trash about Philadelphia and their fans the whole time that he was here.
Mhm.
That's kind of just who he is. He's one of the best trash talkers in the league. So my
Yeah, I think
feelings
that's-
aren't hurt about it. And I do feel like there's probably some sort of, it's hard to say truth, but I mean, there's probably there's some smoke there. Like maybe they told him like, yeah, we definitely, we want you to come back. We're going to set up we'll give you this 1-year deal this year and see how it goes. We'll give you a multi-year deal. And it didn't go very well. So then that multi-year deal was off the table, and that might be what he means he was lied to. Like things change, it's a business. So,
But it doesn't. That may be true, but it doesn't go with his rehab comment. Like, I didn't rehab there. Like, he rehabbed in Florida. Like,
right.
So in training camp in the first 2 games, it was so bad. That has nothing to do with the contract. He wasn't going to get a contract extension. He signed the 1-year deal. He knew he was going to go to the next year. If we're going to sign him for a multi-year deal, we would have done that right out the gate. So
right.
It does, he's talking to talk.
Yes.
I just don't like the sour grapes and saying it was hell. Because what other player has said that it's been hell?
Right. Nobody.
People want to come here. So it's just CJ being CJ. And like you said, he's on your team. You're tolerant of it. You might even get a kick out of it. You like it. When he's not on your team, no, you don't like it at all.
Did this bother you, though, when you saw this where you're like, oh, man, screw this guy? Did it bother you? Or because I saw this and I just brushed it off. It was whatever.
Yeah, I don't like hearing that the time in Detroit was hell. I like to kind of take that personally, I guess, a little bit. I'm not from Detroit, but, I identify with Detroit. Root for all their teams.
You're there pretty frequently, and we're close.
Yeah, and so like I respect Dave Campbell and everything that he's done so much that if you're gonna say it's hell, then it's part of it's like that Dan Campbell made it hell, right? I mean, he's the one that's running the show. He's the one that's setting the environment, and I just. Dave Campbell won't say anything bad about CJGJ. He won't comment on this type of stuff. But I'm sure that hurt him a little bit, right? Why would he say something like that? Or maybe he knows CJ enough that it's like, whatever, it doesn't, it's like
he
said.
seemed to enjoy himself when he was here,
Yeah, exactly.
Way after the fact.
Yep. So of weird takes, the last thing that we'll talk about here is the Greg Rosenthal did an interview with Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, and he went back on one of his tweets, and I'm going to read the tweet. So the difference between this came out right after the draft or somewhere, it was before Jahmyr Gibbs, had made his debut in the NFL. Said the difference between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift is not large. All-time bad take. All time.
I love saying these. There's like a Twitter. It's like freezing cold takes. And it's just full of stuff like this. You'll see like the videos of like the draft videos, like the Bills fans. That's one that sticks out to me is the Bills fans. When they pick Josh Allen, they're all so upset and they're like throwing stuff and they just can't believe it. And, just obviously when you're going to try to put stuff out here like this, you're going to have these thoughts. And, this is just I think we all knew this was probably wrong, right? Before, like, as soon as it was said, I didn't see this right away, but it's like, no, that's not true.
I knew.
And especially after the season.
Yeah, I knew David Montgomery was a big upgrade over Jamal Williams just from us being in the same division. I knew that. Jahmyr Gibbs is a little more a wild card because he's a rookie, but getting drafted that high, I just knew if he could stay on the field, he's going to beat DeAndre Swift, and he's turned into, Jahmyr Gibbs turned in one of the best running backs in the league, and and probably the best dual threat running back in the league right now, I think.
Yes. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's only going up next year, man.
I know. Can you imagine still having Jamal Williams on this team and DeAndre Swift? Oh my God, there's offense wouldn't even be close to what
right.
we are.
No.
But I sympathize a little bit with Greg Rosenthal because, like, for the first time, last year we'll do our NFL review because we did our preview, and some of my takes were bad. I know Zach's take, especially on Will Levis, pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then,
can't wait to revisit that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I get it. And putting yourself out there, anybody else that's does stuff like this or put stuff on Twitter, I mean, that stuff is out there. And yeah, you put your opinion. I like to try to back up whatever my opinion is, so I got like some basis of reason. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It is what it is.
And I mean, it really seems like this. That tweet was his honest thought. It wasn't like any kind of like to causing kind of shockwave or whatever. Like he really just was wrong.
Well, I mean, I don't know the timing on this, but I'm betting it was right after draft time. Right after the draft, when we panning the Lions draft, which is hilarious because it's turned into one of the all-time best drafts. Get Sam Laporta, Branch, Jack Campbell, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, that's the core of our team and part of the core of our team. And yeah, it's hilarious to look back on that. All right, man. Anything before we head out of here? Or next week, right, is going to be fun. We got Meko and Morgan coming on. We're going to do the fantasy play draft, so we're going to pick our best drafts. So I encourage you to listen to that. I think it's going to be fun. It'll be fun to revisit some of the really highlight moments of the season. And I'm curious what some of your favorite plays are. And yeah, I'm curious what Morgan and Meko, and then just like the fantasy draft, Jacob, I'm looking forward to sniping some of your plays right before you pick them.
I'm looking forward to your team sucking and being the worst.
Oh, okay. Nice.
After we pick these plays, it's going right to Twitter. It's going right to Reddit.
Yeah.
There's a good conversation piece. I want to hear what plays we're missing from other people, and I want to hear whose playbook is best.
So just to give a quick preview, we're going to pick, so it's going to be Meko, Scott, Morgan Cannon from Pride Detroit. It's going to be Jacob and I. We're going to randomly, next Monday night when we record, we're going to randomly pick a draft order. And then you try to build your best 5 plays from the season. So, the criteria that you come up with these plays is your own. Is it the most exciting play? Was it, very influential in the game? Was it just a really fun play that you liked? Was it, your favorite trick play? Just whatever. And then at the end of this, we're going to debate on who's got the best 5 plays. And we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be fun, and we'll see. The only stipulation is you have to pick one defensive play of your 5. Doesn't, whatever one you want to pick, but you got to have at least one of them has to be a defensive play. So that'll be next week. And like Jacob said, we'll probably get that up on YouTube or get that up on Twitter, and it'll be a good time. And then that'll be our pod next week. And we'll see.
It'll be great.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Looking forward to talking with Morgan and Meko. We haven't talked to Meko in a while. Morgan, we talk a little more often, but it's always good to catch up with those guys.
Absolutely.
All right. For Jacob, I'm Jason. Let's go Lions.